What if, at 9:12 on a Tuesday morning, a coordinated attack reached the fence line? Not a single individual, not a vehicle, a swarm of 60 commercial quadcopter drones modified to carry fragmentation payloads, launched simultaneously from three separate positions within 1 mile of the complex, followed 30 seconds later by two-man portable surface-to-air launcher teams targeting the air assets responding from Andrews and Bowling. And behind that, two cruise missiles fired from a modified civilian cargo truck parked in the National Mall. What does the defense actually look like when all three threat vectors arrive in the same 2-minute window? The first layer of air defense above the White House is the National Capital Region Integrated Air Defense System, referred to operationally as NCAIDS. This is not a single weapon. It's a coordinated architecture of radar, communication networks, interceptor aircraft, and ground-based short-range systems that treat the airspace above Washington as a protected zone with no civilian exceptions. The restricted airspace designation P-56 covers the White House and Capitol complex. Any aircraft entering that zone without explicit authorization triggers an immediate response sequence. For fixed-wing threats moving at speed, F-16s from the D.C. Air National Guard's 113th Wing at Joint Base Andrews are on continuous alert. Scramble to intercept time from alert status is approximately 4 minutes for the aircraft to reach engagement range over the restricted zone. Drones present a different problem. The 60 quadcopters in this scenario are not fast movers. They're small, low altitude, and their radar cross-sections are comparable to large birds. The primary counter-UAS system deployed around the White House as of recent years is the Drone Defender platform combined with fixed RF detection arrays and optical sensor networks. The RF detection system identifies the control signal frequencies used by commercial drone hardware. When a drone operating in a restricted airspace emits those frequencies, the system locates the source, classifies the device, and enables directed RF jamming to sever the link between operator and aircraft. Against a single commercially purchased drone, this works with high reliability. Against 60 drones launched simultaneously from three vectors, the RF environment becomes congested. The jamming solution cannot address 60 independent control frequencies at once without risking interference with its own communication channels. The cruise missile threat is the one that the entire NCAIDS architecture was originally designed to address. Two subsonic cruise missiles fired from the National Mall are traveling at approximately 550 miles per hour. At that speed, from a launch point 1.2 miles south from the White House, the flight time to impact is roughly 8 seconds. The radar pickets around Washington can detect such a launch almost immediately, but 8 seconds is a response window measured in the time it takes a human operator to comprehend what they're reading on a screen. This is where the ground-based Avenger system, a short-range surface-to-air missile platform carrying Stinger missiles, becomes relevant. Avenger units positioned around the Capitol have engagement range of approximately 4.8 kilometers and a Stinger missile that travels at roughly Mach 2.2. Against a cruise missile already inside 2 kilometers and descending, the geometry becomes difficult. The Stinger can engage. Whether the warhead detonates before or after the intercept point determines whether the White House takes a direct hit or absorbs a proximity detonation. The 60 drones enter the restricted zone at 9:12:04. The RF detection array identifies abnormal signal density from within the first 6 seconds. Uniformed division officers and the North Fence receive a threat notification through their earpieces at approximately the same moment. The counter-assault team positioned on the roof of the White House complex is already scanning. These agents carry M4 rifles and designated marksman platforms. Against a single low-altitude drone at 80 meters, a trained shooter can engage effectively. Against a distributed swarm approaching from multiple compass headings simultaneously, manual small arms fire is a partial solution at best. Each successful engagement removes one threat. The swarm absorbs those losses and continues. The Secret Service evacuation protocol for the principal begins at first threat notification. The president moves from wherever there are in the building toward the Presidential Emergency Operations Center below the East Wing. This is a hardened facility designed to withstand blast, and its construction history traces back to decisions made during the Cold War about what it means for the executive branch to survive a nuclear strike. The transit time from the Oval Office to the PEOC is measured in seconds when the route is clear. At 9:12, if the president is in the Oval, that transit is already underway before the first drone clears the fence line. By 9:12:19, roughly 15 seconds into the swarm's approach, the faster-moving elements of the group have crossed the north lawn at low altitude. CAT officers on the roof have engaged 4 of them. 2 have been brought down by Drone Defender RF disruption. 54 remain functional and inbound. The modified fragmentation payload on each drone is small. The individual blast radius of a single device is approximately 10 meters with fragmentation fragmentation projection out to 25 meters. Against hardened window glass rated to 100 psi overpressure, a single detonation 15 meters from the facade produces cracking and potential panel failure, but not structural compromise. Against personnel standing in open areas of the complex, the fragmentation is lethal within that radius. The Rose Garden, the north portico steps, and the pedestrian areas along the west colonnade are exposed. The two cruise missiles launch at 9:12:22. Radar tracks them immediately. The Avenger crews have the solution. The first Stinger launches at 9:12:26. It intercepts the lead missile at approximately 900 meters south of the fence, and the warhead detonates over the ellipse. The blast and debris pattern does not reach the building. The second missile jinks on its terminal approach, a pre-programmed evasive maneuver built into its guidance package. The second Stinger misses. The third Stinger, fired from a separate Avenger position, intercepts the second cruise missile at 340 meters from the south lawn. At that range, the proximity detonation is still significant. Blast overpressure reaches the south portico at reduced but non-trivial levels. Windows in the southern rooms of the residence receive structural stress. The building holds. Back on the north side, the drone swarm has reached its pre-programmed detonation altitude over the complex. 41 of these 60 drones are still functional at this point. The drone defender system has been cycling continuously and has disrupted 17. 2 were shot down by rooftop personnel. 41 devices detonate within a 4-second window across the north lawn, portico, and the west wing roof approach. The blast sequence is distributed rather than concentrated. No single detonation carries the energy to breach the hardened sections of the building. The combined effect produces structural damage to the north facade, shatters reinforced panels at several window positions, and creates fragmentation patterns across the north lawn that would be lethal to anyone standing there. No essential personnel are standing there. The evacuation protocols moved everyone undercover within the first 20 seconds of the initial alert. Ground staff in the open areas at the moment of first notification did not all reach shelter in time. The casualty count among support personnel on the north lawn is non-zero. The F-16s from Andrews arrive at 9:14:31. They are 2 minutes and 27 seconds late to the primary engagement, which is already over. The drone swarm has expended its payloads. The cruise missiles are down. What the F-16s can do at this point is establish a combat air patrol over the restricted zone, intercept any follow-on threats, and provide air cover for emergency response aircraft coming in from the surrounding area. They perform that function with full effectiveness. Nothing else enters the restricted airspace for the remainder of the morning. The building sustained damage. The degree of that damage depends on the specific construction standards of each affected section, and those standards vary significantly between the historic residence sections and the reinforced operational areas built or retrofitted in the post-1995 period. The Oval Office, positioned in the west wing and separated from the north facade by internal structure, is intact. The PEOC is intact. The residence north-facing rooms absorbed blast stress that will require structural assessment before reoccupation. The visual effect is significant. The functional effect on command continuity is negligible. What this scenario demonstrates, with the same precision that should apply to every element of it, is that layered defense does not mean perfect defense. The Stinger batteries stopped both cruise missiles, though one intercept was a near thing. The RF systems reduced the drone swarm from 60 functional devices to 41 before detonation. The physical hardening of the building converted what could have been a catastrophic structural event into a damaging but survivable one. Every layer performed its function imperfectly, and the combined imperfect performance was sufficient to protect the command structure and the principal. The North Lawn personnel in the open at the moment of detonation did not benefit from any of those layers because the layers were designed around protecting buildings and principals, not grounds crew caught between a checkpoint and the door. The Secret Service after-action process would begin within hours. The RF detection arrays would be examined for gaps in frequency coverage. The rooftop personnel deployment would be reviewed against the multi-vector swarm geometry. The Avenger positioning relative to the terminal approach corridors would be recalculated. The specific drone models used in the attack would be cataloged, their control frequency signatures added to the detection libraries. The cargo truck on the National Mall that served as the cruise missile launch platform would have been identified and destroyed by ground response teams well before the F-16s arrived because the launch signature flagged its position to every sensor in the network at the moment of ignition. The operators would not have left that position intact.